Welcome to the second episode of Not Hex with Blue Bum is the man and 43 OG right here. What's happening, Blue Bum? We are
Hey, man,
I was just saying we're a couple of days late with this stream because you were out and about enjoying yourself.
yeah, and we can kind of do whatever we want. We're not really
Exactly.
pinned down to a schedule, are we?
No. That's exactly right. We can do this whenever we like. So yeah. So you had a good time. You enjoyed yourself, mate?
Yeah, I've been having fun. I'm just like sitting in a Airbnb in the UK, and it's on a really rainy day, so it's nice to be inside and all cozy. And been exploring a few things outside of Hex in the last day or two, and geez, there's some interesting stuff popping up.
Yep. And we were going to have a look at something called a privacy hub. It's a protocol called or a front end called beetroot. Now, I'll be very transparent and say I know nothing about this. I know nothing about this front end. So I'm really going to defer to you, and I'm just going to ask the sorts of questions that I ask myself whenever I'm looking at anything like this, and hopefully we can understand a bit more than what we understand right now. I mean, at least hopefully I can understand a bit more about this by the end of the stream.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. If people want to check out the website, it's beetroot.world. Beetroot, like the vegetable, beetroot.world, and they are pitching themselves as the Swiss Army knife of privacy. So they've got a number of tools that one can use to be more private, and they've also got their own token, which is called Beat, BEET, which is on Pulse Chain. It's only on Pulse Chain. And these are hexagons who kind of ran it. They actually have been KYC'd. If you go on their website, they have KYC'd through this site called what's it called? It's like coin something. You'll have to look through the site to find it. I haven't got it pulled up here. But basically, it's a site, and they CoinMooner, it's called, and they've also got an AMA on CoinMooner, so you can read that, which is a bit more about them. And on CoinMooner, I think the way they work it is that CoinMooner website basically does a video of talking to the people, and if anything happens, then they will release that video. And there's also an audit that you can check out on CoinMooner, and they've also been checked out by Pulse Police and given the okay, I believe. So if people want to double check that, you can obviously go to the Pulse Police Telegram and just do a search for Beat, and you can see what people have been talking about with them. And on CoinMooner, you can go, well, it's actually on GitHub. You can find their audit, and you can have a read. People can have a read through that. I've kind of learned that, it's really good to have audits, but by the same token, it doesn't necessarily mean much at all. And so
I've heard a lot of devs say that they're getting an audit and they're basically paying to educate the auditors on their contract, like what everything is. They basically have to explain what everything is in their contract just to speed up the process, because if they have to just look at the code and try and understand it, it's like that's a difficult thing.
Yeah, I think what audits can do is just kind of put out the really kind of obvious red flags, you know? Even the same with Pulse Police to an extent. Like,
It can also pick up some small little like some little things that devs might sometimes overlook, you know,
mm,
like not necessarily even rushing to like it seems to me that like have you ever read a book that's been in print and then you notice like a spelling error or a
little
punctuation
typo.
error
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like that shouldn't have happened, right? But
Mm,
it can happen, and I guess audits help. And the problem is that like that can be quite benign when it's a book, but when it's code, um, it could potentially be problematic.
disastrous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's good that audits get done, but yes, they are costly and I guess very time consuming, and yeah, it's one of
Mm,
those things, isn't it? It's
yep,
you sort of got to do it, don't you?
yeah. So at the moment, what they've got working are those 3, kind of tools at the moment, which is an anonymous exchange where you can do cross bridge, like go from one chain to another exchanges or on the same one. Um, that they use something called Block Blender, which is another thing that you can go and have to research, and they just kind of use they're just a front end for Block Blender, and so people who want to look into security and how anonymous it really is, or like would have to kind of look into Block Blender. Then they've also got um, and yeah, an aggregator, of all the different bridges, uh, and that you can use, and they list all of the bridges that they look for, and they look for the best deal across all of those bridges. Um, and then they have another privacy bridge mixer, which is their own, I think. And so all of those are different ways, and I'm not exactly sure, um, like the nuts and bolts of those various security tools, and to because like what we have to remember is that when we have all of these kind of privacy tools, it's always along a continuum. Like could a government like track this kind of stuff, or is it just really difficult for the average user to track it, or like so you have a kind of continuum of how private things are, or
Mm,
and also like people say that they haven't got um like a view of the bridge, or a way to track things that are going through bridges, but how actually true that is, I don't I have never verified for myself. So with all of these things, like it's probably going to take more forensic research like within each of these things to know how private these things really are. But these are definitely like a step above just not having any privacy, I would say. And they've also got that peer-to-peer fiat ramp, which is they use local Monero, which is something that I've tried out, and it seems to
ha-
work quite well.
wow,
Yeah, yeah. And what
it
you do
works
is you
well, does it?
basically, yeah, yeah. Well, it's worked well. It worked well for me. Like you bridge over to Monero, like from Ethereum to Monero, and I'm not sure how safe that bridge is, but I just tried it with a small amount. Once I was on Monero is a fantastic privacy coin. I really like that a lot because you actually have to have a wallet on Monero. You have to actually download a whole node onto
Mm,
your
yep,
computer.
yep.
And then, if you just do a couple of hops within Monero, like sending it to one address or then another address, it, I think it's pretty untrackable. Like we've had rumors that, governments can track some of it or something, but nothing really substantiated. And so what you do then is like if you get onto local Monero, you find somebody who wants to pay you into your bank account of your country, and or wherever you have of your bank account, wherever you have your bank account, and then you kind of put it in a scrow, and then um, they see you see the money actually in your account, then you don't do it through PayPal, because PayPal has buybacks or whatever they call it when they can reverse it.
Chargebacks.
But you do it chargebacks, that's it. But you do it through some other way, and you can actually see the money in your account, and that's when you can release it on the escrow into that person's account, the cryptocurrency, the Monero. And that worked for me doing it. I haven't used it extensively. I've only kind of experimented with it for relatively small amounts. And so that's a really fantastic peer-to-peer way to get your crypto back into fiat. Or going the other way, you could actually buy Monero through that means as well. And you can set up, like, it's non-KYC, that website, Local Monero. You can just set up like any basic username and a password. And if you could do that through a VPN as well to have even more privacy.
So you don't need to meet the people with that service?
No, they have it in a escrow, and if there's any disputes, the people who run that, they go and look at what your texting between the two people were, and then they go and sort of find out who is in the wrong.
How can they check if the funds have been paid? Like, how can they actually check?
I guess the person who is sending would send a receipt that they'd paid it in.
Right. And that a receipt that they've paid it into to the bank account. Okay.
The thing is,
I always thought that the local, those local things, I've never had any experience with any of that stuff, but I always thought the local stuff was people coming and meeting you and paying you in cash or something.
You can also do that. That's
Okay.
also an option. You can get it either sent in cash, or like through the mail, or you can get it meeting the person in person.
Okay.
But obviously, or you can get them just to pay it into your account. So let's say you have an Australian bank account, then you basically look for someone who has an Australian bank account and they're kind of, they have a spread. So they're getting money from the spread of how much they're charging you for your Monero. And so then you put the Monero into
the lengths that people need to go to offboard or onboard with crypto is just like, it's just crazy, because I mean, ideally you just want merchants accepting it, and then all this shit goes, like, all this messing
as
about
soon
just
as
goes
you have merchants accepting crypto, all of this goes away.
It all goes away.
Yeah.
All this
And then
messing about.
and as soon as you start charging for your services in cryptocurrency, that's the other side of it. It all goes away. And that's when governments really lose power. Because all of a sudden, like, people are operating outside of their controlled financial system.
Yep.
Which is why they're trying to stranglehold it. But ultimately they can't, because the technology allows for people to do this. So it's really just a matter of people learning how to use it and then using it.
Well, look, governments can do a lot of stuff. I mean, there's no doubt about that in my mind. They can do heaps of stuff, and not necessarily good stuff, but I'm just thinking of a quote that I read today, which somewhat relates to this sort of thing. I can just track it down quickly. Oh, yeah. I guess this has more to do with free speech. It was a quote from Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the free acts of speech."
Yep.
And Harry Truman said, "Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one place to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear.
Yeah, we're seeing all of this kind of stuff come up now, especially because they're having that in America. They're having a Senate committee into censorship, looking at censorship and how the government and social media companies have been colluding in terms of censorship. And we've had RFK. Like, it's just so ironic that, you know, RFK, this kind of, you know, historically his family has just been the centerpiece of the Democrat Party, and you have the current Democrat Party that just trying to censor him and smear him with all of this stuff, and just being ridiculous in how they're doing it. Like, it's so obvious and so bad, you know. And geez, I don't know how people could watch any of those Democrats and just ever vote for them or support them in any way. It's just kind of nutso. But I guess that, you know, very few people actually see what's happening, because, you know, the mainstream media is not reporting it, and people don't watch news or follow, you know, what's actually really happening.
Do you know what I find amazing is how few people knew or know what happened in Canada? Like
About the
with the
truckies.
like very, very few people. If you mention that to people, like, and that's something that,
Yeah,
like, in the crypto community, almost
we
everyone
all
knows.
know about it.
We all
Well,
know about
Twitter.
that.
On Twitter, we pretty much all know about it. Like,
But you
I
ask the
mean, the
average
people I
person,
follow, yeah,
you
they're
just
they're
ask, just
surprised.
they
Yeah,
like, I didn't know. I had no idea. And what's the other one? The other one is, like, it's a big one. It's the
Russian
farmers.
collusion.
No, no,
The
it's the
Dutch farmers.
the Dutch
Yeah,
farmers, how they're trying
yeah,
to, take their land, take the farmers' land, and that's like something that you ask anyone in crypto, they know of it. They know that that's going down. They know, like, it's some, very untoward government, like it's government overreach. They're just trying to take over. Take over things that have been in people's, like in people's families for generations, take over land. And, like, people in crypto know about it, but you ask the average person, they're like, "What?
yeah,
No idea." And these are not like little protests. Like, have you seen the photos of,
yeah.
like, the farmers? Like, I'm talking hundreds of tractors and trucks and stuff,
Yeah, you
if
know,
not thousands.
the silos are strong. The information silos are very strong. And if you're just a person who looks at Facebook and Instagram and watches the ABC and reads The Age, then you're pretty much like in your own little information silo, and you've got a very limited view of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I found when I went to Italy, and was speaking to some of the older generation over there who just religiously watch certain programs on, the national broadcasting network. And they just were all saying the same stuff. And this was around the time of the virus time, and they were just saying all the same stuff, all the same, like, nonsensical things, like, you have to
It
do
you
it to
know, it
protect me.
yeah,
You have to do it to
but
protect me. It's just what they were hearing
I
over
mean,
and
it takes
over again.
time. It takes time for the information to get out, but I believe it does get out. And like Finbear points out, the Dutch government has just fallen. Like Mark Rutte or whatever his name is, he was the prime minister of Holland for a long, long time, and was a WEF, you know, tool and an EU tool, and his government's fallen. And the Dutch farmers have actually got some political parties which are starting to get traction now. So, you know, it does take time, but the information gets out, and those people who are trying to control the information are they're fighting a losing battle. because the more that people realize that they are being lied to, they start questioning all of the other stuff that they're being lied to about, and it just starts snowballing, and you end up having an informed populace eventually, and so like, it takes time, but the information does get out. I think information wants to be free, basically.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So let's get back to.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I still don't know whether what we're seeing in the last few years is just what has always been, but just really behind the curtains. But now, because
Definitely.
there's so much communication, there's so much, like, all the different forms of communication. There's just no way that this can be kept under the
There's
rug
no.
anymore. And I don't know which it is. Whether it's
Well, I'll
just
tell you which it is. It's that the information has always been available, but it's just been much harder to get to. The example is that I
so
started
they've
reading
always
John.
been so they've always
I
been
started
doing
reading.
stuff.
I started reading John Pilger in the early 90s or late. I'm not sure if it was the early 80s or late 80s or early 90s. I started reading John Pilger, right? And I was blown away because he was just like assembling all of this public information, but the way he was assembling the information made you realize what was going on in Iraq, right? And what was going on in the greater world as well. What was going on in Australia? What happened with the Whitlam government, and the dismissal? What happened with, and how much the CIA was involved in that? Like, it's and all he was doing was quoting publicly sourced information. And I realized that, like, the information has always been out there. It's just that it used to be you had to read a book by a journalist who was probably maligned in order to get to that information. Like
Open source intelligence.
reading Confessions of an Economic Hitman, like, which was this book, which was just basically spelling out how the CIA was going into all of these countries and how they were putting them into debt in order to get all of their resources out, and were just raping and pillaging these countries. Like, it's all the information has been out there all the time. It's just that it took the internet to come along to have much more of a free flow of information. Now, ironically, the internet has also been a source of containment of information, but and like, funneling people into these social media silos so they don't hear other kind of information. But it's a double-edged sword, the internet, where we now have the information, and if you want to go out and find out what's happening, you can. And if you want to have the tools to be free, it's all out there as well. But it's not going to be handed to you on a platter. You have to go and do the work to find it out. You have to go and work out what the lies are. And that's a personal journey, because you can't just, it's not about trusting any one source. It's about working out who's lying and who's not for yourself. But once you start going on that journey, it becomes quite obvious, like, who's lying and why they're lying. But it has to be a personal journey that you have to go through, because that's the only way you're going to actually be convinced within yourself.
What do you and we should, like, we are going to get back to beetroot, but this all sort it sort of all ties into it. Ultimately, it all ties into what beetroot's about. Beetroot is about preserving some privacy, and that's what, at least in the last 2 or 3 years, that's what I've seen going away. Like, that sort of stuff seems to be going away. So this is a way that, in a digital form, that people can sort of regain some privacy. Privacy that's being lost in the digital world, but that's a way to regain it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not going to be handed to you on a platter. You're going to have to you're going to have to learn about it, and you're going to have to, like, use it if you want to be private. and you've got a perfect right to be. There's nothing illegal about being private. Like, so it's really just up to each individual if they want to do that, and cryptocurrencies offered us so much, but the thing about cryptocurrencies is that it's a public ledger. Everything is displayed for the public. And so
Not on
if you
Monero.
can link someone's identity with a certain address, then people have always, I think a lot of people assumed that cryptocurrencies were private, but they didn't really understand the technology and how more trackable than any kind of banking system they actually are. And so you can use cryptocurrencies, but you're not going to be in private unless you start using some of these privacy tools. And the only way to do that is to learn how to use them and to actually use them.
Yeah. Yep.
So the good news is that the tools are out there and we can use them. And like with everything around cryptocurrency and sovereignty, it comes down to, self-responsibility. You are able to respond to all of this stuff if you want.
There has been a battle from the powers that be to shut down the privacy stuff when it comes to crypto. Like
they banned Monero in Australia from selling Monero on Australian exchanges.
Yeah. So that's one example of what governments have done. Tornado Cash has been made illegal in the US.
Is it illegal or what? What actually did they actually do?
You're not allowed to use it.
You're just not allowed to use it.
I don't believe you're allowed to use it in the US. And as a shot across the bows, that developer, the Tornado Cash developer, got locked up.
Is he still in jail?
I don't think he is. No, but he was in jail for a long time. He was held for a long time.
In Holland,
that's like hey, developers.
They can only but that's all they can do is they can just target individuals and try to scare everybody else.
Yeah.
And the thing is like they can come up with as many rules as they want or laws as they want. Their problem isn't coming up with laws. Their problem is how do you enforce or police those laws? So you can say, okay, we banned Tornado Cash, but how do you stop people from using it? You just, you try to scare the wits out of them, but you can't lock everybody up. And they haven't got enough people to like try to police these kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, from what I'm seeing in the last few years is that the preference of, whether it's governments or the powers that be, is to make an example of someone.
That's it.
But
there's also the other problem that governments have is that if they do make a law that nobody follows and that everybody openly flaunts, that weakens their own power. And the more of those that they come up and are ineffective and don't work, the more they lose their power. So they're in a losing battle, either way you look at it.
Yeah. It's a tough one because for the longest time, I've believed that, when governments make laws, they should have a time limit on them. And apart from, let's say, a handful of like just steadfast, like constitutional type laws, if you know what I mean, I feel like there are certain laws that you could have, like in a functioning society, you could say, hey, we don't condone, killing people, for example. That is a law that that is a steadfast law. But like all the other like laws that they just like come up with and like rush them through with other important stuff, they just tack them onto the end just to get them through, and they get voted on and get through. Like stuff like that, all these laws, they should have time limits on them, and then they just automatically expire. And then if they're good, like um they need to vote them through again. They need to
It's a
like say,
very good
hey,
point. It's a
this
very
is
good point because we have so many laws being stacked up upon laws,
yeah,
and your defense can't be that you didn't know about that law. And so it's
no,
like the average person is meant to know like thousands of
no,
laws.
no, you can't know. And they're actually I would even argue that there are so many that there's probably a lot of contradictory stuff out there, stuff that contradicts itself and makes it virtually impossible to be a law abiding citizen in a regular, just everyday sense, you know?
Yeah, and there's also differences between laws and like rules or laws and statutes. So they have this kind of things that they put on the books which actually aren't laws, but they're rules, and what they do is they try to fine you if you break these rules. But in actual fact, if a lot of people challenge these
You
and
have
took
to
them through the courts, they
yeah,
wouldn't be able to
that's
get away with it.
that is and the problem is that people don't challenge them, and by not challenging them, we acquiesce, which is
That's it.
to accept, reluctantly, albeit reluctantly, to accept, whatever they're putting forth.
Yeah.
You don't oppose it, so you accept it. It's just, hey, I'm just yeah.
And
And that's
and
it.
that
That's
and
the
that
problem
goes
we
da
do
and
have.
that goes back to most of their power comes through either putting the fear of like violence into people, or just through people acquiescing or consenting to whatever is being done to them. That's the source of most government power, really.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, look, I I'm not like an anarchist or anything like that. I do like the order that good government can bring. Although, I haven't seen. I feel like governments they've been resting on their laurels, at least in Australia, for far too long, and they're just going through the paces. And like some of the stuff is just ridiculous. Some of the stuff, but that's the system we live in, and you know, I don't know where we go to from here. Like, you haven't been in Australia for a while. What have you spoken to any of your family members about, like the changes in Australia since you've left?
Yeah, it's one of the questions I always ask for people who have been in Australia. I was like, what was the vibe there? How was it? Um, and I don't get the feeling that too much has changed. It's just this slow kind of creep towards more authoritarianism, and people are just kind of happy that some of the heavier stuff has stopped. Um, yeah, what's your
Yeah.
vibe in Australia at the moment?
When it comes to Australia and Australians, I've I've lost a bit of faith in the Australian voter. Because the way I saw it is like after the 2-year flu, um, I was of the opinion it's like I don't care which side of politics you're on, you gotta be kicked out. Like there's no reason why any politician should still be in power after these 2 years. Everyone deserves their asses kicked because everyone fucked up. Like everyone
Mm.
messed up badly, badly, and performed really poorly. But I was surprised to find that people were happy with how things went. That surprised me, and it goes to show you that, like, you know, I live in somewhat of an echo chamber. So, for those sorts of things, I must live in an echo chamber because I was sure, absolutely positive that they would all have to go after a couple of years of this nonsense. But I think it goes to show you what money does, like government money can do. So
You know
over
what?
that period
It's
of
also that
time, They paid their way through that period of time. They just spent so much taxpayer money, so much money, and
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think it's also that people like the security of being told what to do. It's much scarier for a lot of people. Like, freedom is a lot scarier for people than just acquiescing to being told what to do and going along with what they think is the herd. But I think that could change very quickly as well, because those people who follow the herd will follow the herd if it goes in the other direction as well.
Yeah,
Anyway, let's
man.
get back
Like,
to some crypto stuff.
yeah.
Let's get
I mean,
back
this
to beat.
I always feel like this stuff is sort of related because it gives context to why we would even it gives context to why would even entertain using something like, Monero or something like beetroot
Or a
world.
cryptocurrency, yeah.
Yeah, or a crypto. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. Why would we? I mean,
I think once you go down the crypto rabbit hole, you have to start, finding out what money is all about, and what is
yeah.
the story behind money, and how is it created, and how is it distributed, and how does it have value and stuff like that, and then you start seeing the inner the workings of the global elite and
And
governments.
why is it that there's just a handful of people making decisions about an interest rate, and it's like an arbitrary number,
It's so
right?
ridiculous, isn't it?
It's so
They've got this
ridiculous.
they've got this tap, right, which is just flowing out of money, and they're arguing about turning it a little bit on, a little bit faster or a little bit slower, and that's all it is. But it's basically like more and more money coming out all the time.
But I mean, like later on this year, a lot of people in Australia are going to come off their fixed rate loans. So they're going to come off fixed rate loans, which are probably hovering around the 2 to 3%, and they're going to
And,
jump up to 6%. Right.
right.
So those people are going to have double. They're going to be paying twice as much interest.
For their mortgages and stuff, hey?
And
Yeah.
bear in mind the interest. The interest is this number that a handful of people come up with. They just come up with this number, and they decide if it goes up or they decide it goes down every month. And who are they? And why do they have this power? And why do we like we don't if you want to have a house or you want to buy a house, it's very unlikely in Australia, for example, you're going to be able to save up money for a house. You're going to have to borrow money, which means that you're locked into that whole game,
System.
that whole system, and then you've got no choice but to pay. And if you're and put it this way, you might say, hey, I'm not going to fall into that trap and buy a house, right? I'm going to rent. I'm going to be smart and I'm going to rent. Well, guess what? Right? You're renting a house from an investor who got a loan and has got interest repayments and has to make sure they can make those interest repayments so that your rent's going to go up according to interest rates as well. Your rental, how much you pay. So it's all, I mean, the whole thing is based
And
around that.
governments are going to prop up that house of cards for as long as they can, because if they don't, they won't be voted back in.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that in Australia, for example, it's getting harder and harder for people. I think we've hit the tipping point in Australia, at least, when it comes to the next generation getting in to the property market.
Oh, forget about it, hey? If you're a young
like
and
like it was like I got in quite young. I was like, had my parents like sort of pushing me in that direction when I was quite young. So I did, but like how even if you push your kids to do that now, like very hard in metropolitan Melbourne, and good luck finding something for less than, like, even if it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment, good luck finding something for less than $400,000. So you're going to need like if you're just a young person, you're going to need like $80,000 saved. How long it takes to save, not to earn. Not saying like, oh, get a $40,000 job and a couple of years you've saved 80. No, you know how long it takes to save 80 grand? It might take someone, and then you've got in at the bottom, at the very, very bottom rung of a property market. Quite possibly you buy something that has owners corporation stuff to pay every year or every
Rates
like,
plus
you know,
bills plus
you've got, when you buy it, you've got well, actually, when you buy it, you might not have stamp duty if it's the first thing that you buy. Now, I think they give like some credit to first home buyers, but it's really tough. So unless you have that younger generation buying into the market, how are they going to push up the prices for everyone else? Like, you need, like, the people who are, let's say,
well, it's just investment. People are just buying it as investments.
but
So
why
it's
would
just
you
more
buy
and
a
more.
residential? Why would you buy a residential property as investments with what? Like, if you look at the laws that have come in Melbourne in the last couple of years, like, there's more obligation on the landlord. Less like, landlords have lost a lot of property rights. Used to be able to ask someone to leave at the end of their lease. You could just say, hey, I want my property back. You can't do that anymore. You need to have like a legit, like, I'm renovating the house. Like, it has to be a renovation that warrants that person not being there. And then you can't re-rent it for like 6 months if you ask them to leave under those circumstances. You can go say, I want to live in it by myself. I want to go live in it, and then you go live in it. That's fine. If you sell your property, and by the way, I thought this was bad in Victoria, like these changes. And then I heard, like, were you on the stream when Gary was talking to us about what they do in California? And in California, if you want, you can never, like, what is it? If you ask someone to leave a property you've rented out to them and you go live in that property, I think this is what he said, you can never rent that property out again to anyone. Like, that's that from that point on, as long as you own it, you can never rent out that property again to anyone once you've asked that person to leave. How crazy is that as a rule? It doesn't even seem
Yeah.
doesn't even seem.
How do you release that, as well? So that sounds ridiculous.
No, you can't release it. You can't release it.
Yeah, but how do they
How would you
police that? They'd have to.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, governments are nutso, aren't they? I mean, they really are the dregs of society of the people who, politicians. They really are the dumbest, most moronic, most insecure people of our society.
I like the idea of automating as much as we can of the process. Like, there's a lot of stuff we can get rid of, a lot of like useless, like, think like, why do politicians even exist? Right? They exist to represent a group of people, because you
Well, they're meant
used to have
they're meant to be servicing us. They're meant to be
but they're meant to be
actually working for.
representing us. Yeah, but they're meant
But
to be
actually, it's a
representing.
service as well. They're meant to be like doing a service to the people.
Yeah, but they go there and vote on behalf of their constituency. So this was in a time when, quite possibly you had no way of going into the capital city and speaking your mind, or telling people what was going on. They had to organize in a way. How are we going to represent these people? Well, one person will go in and represent these people. I mean, you would think with technology, and I'm certainly not saying, okay, now we need to just democratically vote on every single piece of legislation. That would be a nightmare. That would not make any sense at all, right? Would not make sense, right? But you would think that people could vote on certain things. Like, certain things, there might be certain things that are, you know.
Yeah, but look what happens when we do have mechanisms like for instance, you're seeing this new, what is it called, the vote they're having, the referendum that's coming up. You know what I mean? They have like these
Oh yeah,
kind of
they're having a reference for
like
anyone who
dumb choices, which actually like is not really much of a choice at all, and it doesn't have any real power or
so
whatever. So
so
they just
to,
have
for a bit of context
these
for
false
people
sort of
watching, in
dichotomies.
in Australia, we are having there's a referendum
To change the
on
constitution, like
to
to
change it.
change anything in the Australian constitution, you have to have a
Yeah.
referendum. You have to get a majority of the people and a majority of the states as
Mm.
well. And so it's very hard to change things in the constitution. But the things they proffer up are things which are kind of like probably not what they say they're doing it the reason for, and also things that are really kind of like not that kind of like follow the constitution before you start changing it. Even, you know what I mean?
They don't want to follow it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah. It would be nice for us to have like a little bit more like written into a constitution, like some sort of Bill
Like
of
a Bill of
Rights,
Rights, like
or something like just
like
some.
an US. Yeah, but even then, like you look at the US, and it's one thing having the Constitution. It's fantastic. It is better than that Australia. They do have a Bill of Rights, which is just amendments to their Constitution, but they don't follow their Constitution. They still don't follow their Constitution, and their courts don't back up their Constitution, except in kind of like extreme cases in highly politicized ways. So it still takes everyone following. It still takes mass consensus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like a
Well,
cryptocurrency's value.
I guess that's sort of like in the US. That's why like people will. That's why they're so like adamant that you're not going to take away my gun rights. Like
Mm.
whether you agree, whether people agree with it or not, it's like it's in the Constitution. I have a right to bear arms, and I'm going to exercise that right and defend that right to bear arms.
Yeah, and they
And
have they have a right to free speech. But look at all the censorship that's happening, and look at all the
yeah,
collusion between government and social media companies. Well, they're just not
yeah,
following their constitution, you know. And the
yeah,
courts don't really back them up in that for that stuff.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Um, yeah, dude, it's
Anyway, let's get back to Beat, because Beat's awesome.
yeah,
Look,
it's
cryptocurrencies are a solution to all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like putting the power back into the hands of individuals, like which is, you know, where they can't grab centralized control. And that's like the way governments have controls, because they can have control over the monetary system, and they can print up as much as they want, and they can tax people on the other end, and they squeeze people, and they can, you know, instill a fear of God into them through controlling the media and stuff. And we can take all of this stuff back. It just takes individuals to do it. And Beat is one of the ways you do it, like by having privacy, by using some of their tools. And they've got some very interesting tokenomics as well. So I just want to like have a quick look at their tokenomics. They had a whole bunch. They had like a sacrifice kind of thing, and the sacrifice was happening in a very low key
okay.
way.
Hang on, just to clarify. So we're going to make a distinction between the services they offer on their website
Yeah,
and a token. Do they actually they have a token? Do they?
they have a token called Beat. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what's the like? Does it have a use case? What's the purpose of this token?
Yeah, so well, like if people use their anonymous exchanges, like they get a little bit of a percentage from the people using that thing, and
If you
that
hold
goes
if you hold the
well,
token.
that basically goes to buying and burning the token, right?
Ah, okay.
So let's say
Yeah.
you use let's say a user uses their exchange. As part of that, there's a little service fee, and that service fee basically goes back to the Beat holders by buying and burning. Now, the other way that people get Beat is it's every time somebody does any kind of transaction with Beat, there's a 2% tax, and that tax goes towards buying and burning Beat. Now, what they have is they have some of that beat goes to a burn address. So it's kind of like an OA, but it's an OA without any keys and nobody being able to control that. So it's just, so it is kind of part of the market cap, and it is part of it. It does get it does get all the reflections from these fees. Like just by holding beat over time, the number of beat you have increases. So it's a deflationary token. They also have like locked liquidity, and they have provably locked liquidity, and they have different tiers of locked liquidity. So one type of liquidity is locked every I think 2 or 3 months, or maybe 2 months, and another is locked every 3 months, and then another is locked every 6 months. And then basically it's relocked after that. And the reason they have those different tiers in case, like, because at the moment all the liquidity is on PulseX, and they don't want to be in a situation of, let's say PulseX V2 becomes redundant and we all go to V3, and that's where all the liquidity is. They want to be able to move that liquidity to that.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. So so it's got locked liquidity. It's basically just by holding it, you're able to increase the amount of beat you have through this 2% tax on any transaction, and also the fees that come from using the platform as a kind of buy and burn thing. So it's got some, quite simple, nice tokenomics. And also what they're working on at the moment, which I don't have a lot of information about, is something called Sugar Beat. And Sugar Beat is going to be some sort of privacy tunnel, they're calling it, that's going to be on Pulse chain and on X1 chain, which is the chain that the Zen people are working on. So and that's going to use tokens as opposed to the native coins. So I'm not exactly sure. They're not really, they're the kind of people that don't put out, like promises or anything like that. They just kind of give hints about what they're working on, and when it comes out, it's going to come out.
Let me read this. Let me read this. This privacy protocol. Okay, hang on. Tunnel coming to Pulse chain and chain. This privacy protocol is being built from scratch. It's unique and groundbreaking. There is nothing like Sugarbeat, neither in crypto generally, nor Pulse chain or X1 chain. Hint: it will feature tokens as opposed to native coins. And it's not for bridging or swapping. Initially, the Pulse chain version will feature Beat with Hex and PulseX in the longer term plans. The X1 chain version will feature Zen initially. It will be a fantastic addition and sister protocol to the bridge, the privacy bridge. Okay. Oh, well, we're going to have to, for real, we're going to have to watch this space and see what that's about. Seems like something different,
If Jack's not involved in Beat in any way, you can actually, if you look at, you can see an AMA with the Beat people on that coin, blah, 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 I can't remember what it's called. If you go to the website and just look through the website, you'll be able to find an AMA with them, and as they have been KYC'd with that platform. And but like they seem, I mean, I've been hanging out in the Telegram for a bit, and I've looked into it, and they've also been checked out by the Pulse Police and stuff, and it looks like they're a straight up legit kind of project that have products that you can use. And obviously everyone do their own research into each of those products. And
absolutely. But it's worth having the heads up that this exists, and do your own research about like exactly what kind of privacy you do get. Like the cross-chain stuff, I always think, well, you're trusting someone, aren't you? With cross-chain stuff.
I reckon we're getting trustless bridges coming. I was actually been looking at another protocol this week, which is super interesting. I haven't completely got my head wrapped around it. It's called Xenify, XENIFY. It's going to be cross-chain bridges. It sounds complex at first, but it's like a cross-chain aggregator, and you earn their token, and it's literally just come out. So that's something really interesting. There's another really interesting. Actually, I was chatting to someone this week in real life. Actually, met a Hexagon in real life, which was really cool. And he was telling me a lot about Tetra, and Tetra is got some really interesting things coming. I was thinking we could maybe talk about Tetra next week, because
What is
there's
Tetra?
Tetra's like basically automating smart contract transactions. So you'll have software on your computer, but you'll be able to set up a whole lot of things. Like you'll be able to automate a whole lot of transactions within a kind of thing. But like one of the examples this guy gave me of what you'll be able to do is that, let's say you have an account with a hex stake on it, and you want to pump up your security. What you'll be able to do is get an actual deployer, make a deployer contract onto that address, so that if anybody ever puts Ethereum onto that address, the deployer will immediately grab it.
Okay, what to do a transaction?
Yeah, so no one will ever be able. It's just adding more security to your hex. So that, and what he was talking about doing is, he said what he wants to do is put an amount of money on an address, give out the seed phrase, and say everyone just go for it, because every time everyone will try to put money on that, the deployer will just grab. So no one will be able to actually get Ethereum on to make the transaction.
Only the person
who has the keys to that deployer. So with Tetra, you'll be able to do stuff like that, but also you'll be able to build any kind of set of like of instructions. So you'll be able to, like, you have to say you have a Hedron stake, you'll be able to automate it so that after the 30 days comes up, it takes the COSA out of that, and then stakes that in another address, and then stakes the Hedron again, and or maybe just siphon some of it off to do something else. You'll be able to set up these automated things.
Staking, so you don't get the higher staking time lengths, because as you stake more COSA or Hedron, you get longer staking periods.
So you'll be able to do all sorts of if-thens. You know what I mean? Like you'll be able to do all sorts of if-thens, and like make sure that you get it at like if the gas is between this and this, then do this transaction. So you can wait for the good gas times to do things.
There's an app on Android called Tasker, and you can do stuff like this. Like you can do things like, for example, if I get a text message, take the contents of that text message and email it to this email address. Right? So that's really handy. Let's say if you're going overseas and your number is not a number that will work overseas.
For me, because I can't get messages from my Australian number.
You can't messages from your Australian number. So all you need is that number. You need a phone that's always like on, basically.
In Australia.
So you would need a phone that's like always just plugged in. Or alternatively, there might be another way around it. Like, but you're going to need some sort of device with the SIM card connected to the network, because if the SIM card isn't registering on the network, it's not going to receive text messages.
But it's weird because with my American phone, I could get text messages when I was overseas on the American phone.
Yeah,
but with the Australian one, I couldn't. Yeah.
Well, I've got an Italian SIM, and I get text messages from Italy when the SIM's in Australia. It doesn't cost me anything. I can receive them. But that just doesn't work with I mean, I'm sure it works with some, but you get like I should state it correctly. You can make it work, but they really do charge you an arm and a leg. in Australia, if you want to take your SIM card overseas just to receive text messages, it's like you're looking at like $5 or $10 a day, which like adds up. That adds up. And if it's just to like get a text message every 6 months, it makes no sense whatsoever, because you could get that for nothing in Australia, you know. So that app is like a useful app, but you sort of need to. I don't know if there's like. I haven't looked into it deeper than that. There's probably another way to do it. There's probably other ways to do it, but that was the easiest. It didn't cost me anything to do that. It was like free.
So anyway, Tetra is going to be able. You're going to be able to automate a whole lot of tasks, and like with if-then statements and stuff like that. And it's something people can build up as well. And if they have certain like strategies, they're going to be able to like sell those, and like a percentage of that strategy goes to the person who created it or whatever. And I think we're going to see a lot more stuff being developed where everything just happens in the background, and that you don't have to like deal with so much.
Yep. So, all right, well, Tetra. All right, well, once again, is that on a particular chain, or do I have to do any research, or are you doing all the research, Bluey?
Well, we can both do it, whatever. Like, I'm happy to like do, just do a bit of research and bring what I know. Like I'm not like even with like this beat stuff. I just did very much. I didn't dig deep too much. Like, I mean, like
we don't need to dig too deep. We're just sort of throwing our eyes across it. We don't have to be experts in all of it. I don't like the idea of having to go look at something that I'm not like necessarily interested in. But I'm happy to listen to someone tell me about it. I only like, when it comes to crypto, I only like looking at stuff that it just like that grabs me, that I'm interested in, that draws me in. Then I will happily go off and just research it for like hours and on end, like happily with a smile on my face. So maybe we can both bring stuff to these sessions, and maybe one time it's me talking to you about something that I've researched. The next time
we could even bring someone on who knows more about, Tetra.
Yeah, I tried with beetroot. I tried
as well. I kind of put it out there that we were doing this, and that we'd love if they wanted to come on, and I'd never got an answer. So, fair enough. They don't want to. If they want to be in the background as well, and
not a big deal.
That's cool, man. Yeah.
So Tetra, and I'm just trying to think. The other thing that
I think in the future, I'm gonna bring Zenify to it, because Zenify looks super interesting, and I haven't fully got my head around it. It seems quite complex, but like really, really interesting. And I really feel like, to be honest, I really feel like Zen set the bar in terms of people coming up with, like, teams coming up with projects which don't require sacrifices, which are just like people just building stuff and putting stuff out there. And if people want to use it, they use it. And Zenify is that kind of same philosophy of, fair launch crypto. And what they're doing is like, sounded really interesting, because this whole cross-chain swapping is really important to crypto, I think. The ability to move between all of these chains, and in a trustless way. So these trustless bridges is really the next kind of like bar of what needs to happen in crypto, as trustless as possible anyway.
Well, I mean, there's trustless, and then there's not.
It's a continuum.
Well, I mean, there's trustless. It's a tough one. Apparently, that's a very, very tough one. Like, I mean, you saw that video by Kyle a while back about bridges. I think I've watched that thing about 3 or 4 times in its entirety. It is so like, it's an education. I think it's like a 25-minute explanation of like in detail of why trustless bridges are difficult when it comes to EVM chains.
But that's the great thing about humanity, you know what I mean? And about places where you have spaces where there is no permissions needed. You have a clear problem, a clear challenge, and people go about finding ways to get around that challenge, to accomplish that
Oh
challenge.
yeah. Yep.
And so I feel very confident that we're going to see it happen.
Oh yeah, I think we will as well, because we're seeing
Mm.
advancements. The other thing that I would like to look at some stage, maybe a bit further down the track, when maybe they've got the ball rolling, is spillways. I heard some people talking about
Oh
spillways,
yeah.
which is like,
I wanted to ask you about that actually. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know a whole lot about it apart from what's, some of the stuff written on the web page, spillways.finance. Um, it's apparently it's like a fork of Tornado, but you know, I don't know if it's operational yet. I don't even know if it's like properly has an anonymity set or what. I don't know. I really don't. So I'm not, by all means, me just mentioning it doesn't mean go and use it. You know, W-
You know, there's a great bridge called Houdini, and they actually bridge through Monero into whatever chain. So if you want to go from like ETH to BNB, they actually route it through the Monero bridge and through the Monero blockchain back
but
in.
why? Like, is it cheaper? Did they make it? Why?
No, it's anonymity.
No, but why not just do it
It's better
yourself?
anonymity.
Why would you use them?
Well, you could. Well, it's just easier. It's just one. It's just that you're on one page. You go one ETH
There's
over to
so
BNB and
much
whatever. Let's say
trust.
you want another. Let's say you want another token over on BNB. You want USDC on BNB, and
You don't
basically
even
they
know.
route it
So,
through
but
Monero.
I don't see how that is a good solution. Like, I have to put my like thinking in an adversarial way. I got to put that hat on right now. I don't see how that could be a good solution, because you're basically just trusting that they don't record the data, that you're in and out address, and then they know, like they know that in and out address. What's the fucking point? Like, why would you ever want to use a protocol? And look,
Who knows? The relayer knows or something.
the the front end, I'm not sure how it works, but like if they,
Well, that's what we have to look into. I mean,
but
obviously,
I,
if they're going to build something like that, they're going to kind of like
but if you're
they're
putting,
going to make it.
if you put it in one end and get it out the
Oh,
other,
like that's right. One thing I was reading about what was I reading it? I'm not sure if it might have been Beat or maybe it was something else. So what they do is they have a variable fee, so you can't even track through what fee has been charged. There's all sorts of ways people are, adding on, making it more difficult for the tracking. And you really have to go into the nuts and bolts to find out what they've done and how effective that could be. Or how vulnerable it could be. And the nice thing is that a lot of it's very good just for, basic privacy. Like if you want to send someone some money and you don't want them to see your whole financial history, it's pretty easy to do nowadays.
well, there's also like secret network that you can use, I guess.
There's
But once
secret
again,
networks,
once
an
again,
option that they have a bridge, yeah. So it's how much
but
they know
once
about
again,
on
like
that bridge, yeah. But then
which
if you
nodes
hop,
are
but then
you?
if yeah, but then if you hop with within the secret network, then or you bridge from the
Yeah,
secret
but
back to Monero, and then you hop there, and like,
there's always a but. There's always a but. It's like, are no, you're using their wallet, right?
well, that's the other thing
What
is that you
data
want
do
to be
they
on these
collect?
bridges for a shorter time. But that's the same with centralized exchanges. You just want to be on there as quickly as
No,
possible, on and off of
yeah,
these
no,
bridges
but
and centralized
that's
exchanges as
why
quickly as
Tornado
possible.
was like the gold standard. That's why Tornado was like the gold standard of that sort of thing, because everything was on chain. There was no like hopping all this bullshit. It's like everything's just in on the chain itself happening. So it's just like it disappears on the chain and then pops up over
You
here.
can say that about Secret Network, though. Like the same with Secret Network.
Except you're being forced to use their Kepler wallet, right?
Yeah.
So what data does that Kepler wallet record? I don't know. Do you?
Oh,
like what nodes are they connecting to? And what data are they recording?
The thing about
but
the thing about all of that is that you have to have the private key to even view a transaction.
But it might, yes, but maybe it can tell. Like, for example, I remember telling you something that with Secret Network, if you bridge from the Secret Network, like from Ethereum to Secret Network, the address that you bridge into is actually in plain text viewable on Etherscan.
Yeah, but then once you do a couple of hops on Secret, then it's impossible to.
My point is
find
that
it.
if you ever bridge into Secret Network from another address into that same address, then there's a connection there. So
good point.
So there's lots of but the other thing is that you don't know who's running that infrastructure.
There's a
You don't know who's running
it.
And that's why like Monero is good, because you, like you said before, you run your own node with Monero, right? Is that yeah? If you run your own node, then everything's just coming through, like everything's going through
your
computer. Your node. So that's there's lots of things to consider. And what's up, Kool-Aid? Kool-Aid's in the chat. Yeah, I think I saw Kool-Aid write something along the lines of like run it through two different things. Yeah, it's like
exactly. You just go to Secret, go to Monero, back over to whatever Houdini. Like, I mean, you can make it very difficult for people to track you. And for most of privacy, all we really need is that if I want to send you some money, OG, I want to not give you the ability to see my whole financial history and be able to track my wallets.
I thought that what Tornado did with Nova was like, and what ZK Money were doing was very similar. It was like basically the same thing that they were doing, which was like you would like put it to a layer 2, and then from that layer 2 you could like
come back to a new address.
You could come out to a new address, but with whatever amount you like. So if you needed to pay someone, you could just like put it out to that address that you needed to pay someone, and it would just show up in the address, and there's no connection to anything. So I thought that was like a better sort of way than with the way the original Tornado Cash was, which I think was.
I mean, I would love people like you, because you're so good at this stuff, like to look into Beetroot and to look at the nuts and bolts of the tools that they are offering, and potential points of vulnerability.
I wouldn't say I'm so good at it, like from a user perspective, like, because I don't generally use any of this stuff, but I like looking into it. Like, I like exploring it because it's of interest to me, like, because that whole thing of running a business and one day wanting to perhaps pay or accept payments in crypto, but not wanting everyone to see everything, like all of the all of my data. I feel like that's why I like looking into this stuff. It seems like you need to know which is the best way to go.
Hey, we've got Beetroot in the chat. G'day.
What's up, Beetroot?
I'm not sure if it's actually from someone from their team or if it's someone who's made up a username, but yeah. If you ever want to come on and chat to us in more depth about like the tools that you have on there. I don't know if you've been watching the stream, but we kind of went over it in a very surfacey way. But it'd be great to have someone come in and tell us the nuts and bolts of things and what potential vulnerabilities are, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we had look.
Oh, is that Kool-Aid? Is it just Kool-Aid who changed his name? I don't know. Maybe not. Oh, I can't work it out. Oh, okay, he's the nighttime admin, not part of the main team.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So, what do you want to do? Do you have anything else you want to?
Well, no, like we were going to keep it to like just an hour, or
Yeah.
we've gone a little bit over now.
Yeah.
So, that was a pretty good discussion.
Yep.
And we've got more stuff to go on with. Like we'll maybe have a look at Tetra next week.
Yep.
And
Sounds good.
and we've got Zenify on the cards as well for one down the road. And I don't think we're going to have any shortage of things to talk about. There's stuff what's also really interesting is all of these dexes that are popping up now, offering like 1,000% APR, and that's something
That's all
interesting
short-term stuff.
to talk about. Obviously, but it's what it is. It's a way for these new dexes to basically distribute their tokens and to bootstrap their dexes.
Oh, by the way, let me just say that apparently Hayden, and this is just reading a tweet from Richard Hart, apparently Hayden Adams, the Uniswap founder's Twitter has been hacked. So don't click on any links that he's posted.
At some stage, we're going to have to tackle Uniswap version 4 as well, which looks very interesting. But for another time.
Yep.
And what that means for Pulse Chain as well, because I think they're going to have to fork Ethereum in order to have Uniswap version 4.
They're going to have to what? Fork Ethereum.
They're going to have to fork Ethereum in order to have Uniswap version 4.
Okay.
Before they can deploy Uniswap version 4. And so that means what does Pulse Chain do? Do we just continue to copy whatever Ethereum forks happen, or do we just
like fork Ethereum
maintain our own
again?
thing? Well, they fork it every time they have an upgrade to Ethereum. It's a fork.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the old chain dies. Like they.
Well, yeah. The Ethereum forks have all been. I think they're all hard forks. So, yeah. What would it be? Stakers nowadays have to choose
to merge
which one to.
Kool-Aid saying it's a merge, not a fork.
Oh, okay. I thought all the upgrades on Ethereum were forks. Okay, I'm wrong about that.
Yep.
Do you understand what a merge is?
That's what happened with when they went to proof of stake, because they had the beacon chain, which was running, and then they had to merge. They had to merge all the data from the proof of work chain.
They run in tandem. Okay, but eventually it's a hard fork once it all goes over, essentially. Or maybe I've got the technical terms incorrect.
Oh, I'm yawning. I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning, mate. I went for it's like 20 past 10 at night. I went for a run. I go for a run Saturdays, and I used to run a lot more than I do now. Now I sort of run once a week, which is not enough. You got to run at least 2 or 3 times a week for it to matter. But that run I do every week, it just kills me, and I'm usually pretty tired by Saturday night, which is where we're at right now.
Cool. Let's wrap it up then.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Appreciate it. This is episode 2 of Not Hex. Bluey and I obviously did not have a heated debate, but I was playing around with titles that would trigger people to clickbait titles, and heated debate seems to get people clicking. So I thought I'd try it out. All right, Bluey. Thanks for chatting, mate. We'll if we don't see you, maybe we'll see you on Tuesday night on
Yeah, Tuesday I should be okay. I should be. I'm not sure where I'll be on Tuesday, but I should be right.
All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
to come on.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next time.